Hello, and welcome to Copy That, the new series from Quadcast that's all about copywriting. I'm your host, Lewis, and today I'm joined by Adam Brannon to talk all things copy. Adam, thanks so much for being here. It's great to have you on.
Thanks very much. Nice to be here.
I'm really excited for our conversation today. You seem like a fellow movie nerd like myself, so this is very exciting for me.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Can't get enough films, to be honest with you.
Me too. So I just want to get started with the same thing I ask everybody first, which is how did you get into copywriting?
So my journey in content and copywriting started at university. So I did journalism at the University of Lincoln from 2007 to 2010. I actually specialised in television and film and radio at the University of Lincoln rather than online. But I kind of have always had a passion for writing, and it actually went right back to when I was around 7 or 8 and I was in Cubs. And I tell this story quite a lot and people do laugh. And every year at Cubs we would have a Christmas story competition, and I always actually used to do quite well. So in the first couple of years I won the Christmas story competition, and then in the third year I think the success had gone to my head a little bit, and I created something that was a bit dark. And I remember it now, when it was about a child who got lost in the woods at Christmas, and she was a little bit like Red Riding Hood type story and Hansel and Gretel, that type of thing. And I didn't win that year. That was my final year at Cubs, and I think I came third. And the feedback was, that's too dark for a Christmas story. That's why you didn't win. So I can trace the kind of obsession with writing right back to kind of 7 or 8 years old and Cubs. But in terms of career wise, I always wanted to do something content related and writing related. So when I graduated from Lincoln University in 2010, I joined the Press Association and was a listings producer there. So I wrote for the Radio Times, the Sun, the Times, and the Telegraph for their film and TV listings, which kind of was like a sidestep to the hobby that I had as well at the time, which I'll talk about a bit more later on. And then I joined the world of digital marketing in 2017, where I joined an agency in my hometown of Hull, stayed there for 4 years, and then joined the agency that I'm at now, which is Heard. So Heard are an award-winning digital marketing agency specializing in kind of the full suite, all of the channels of digital marketing, and I head up the content marketing proposition at Heard. So kind of from being the smallest of children right up until now, I've just always had a passion for writing.
That's amazing. That Christmas story is it too dark for a Christmas story? I mean, who knows?
Clearly, they were a little bit concerned. I think Kayla and Baloo were a little bit concerned that an 8-year-old could write something as dark as it was. I wish I still had a copy of it. I really do, so I could look back.
There's all these stories though of like Tim Burton, who was like, seemed to be a troubled child who has gone on to become a creative entity unto himself.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's just
40 years.
A music video. I mean,
exactly. So I'd love to know, moving into actual work, how will you get started on a piece of copy? Are you a planner? Do you just dive straight in? What do you like to do?
So the first thing I will always do is make a cup of tea before starting on any kind of content production. Working at an agency, in a digital marketing agency, everything has to be quite planned out, as you would imagine. Clients are paying for the content that we're producing and the strategies that we're setting. So it always starts with that kind of research phase, getting things down on paper or on Microsoft Word, in our case, for most of the time, making sure that we're truly understanding what the brief is. So as part of the content proposition, we have certain templates that we use to try and extract as much information out of a stakeholder at the client side as possible. And then also, if we can, kind of interview people about what the expectation of that piece of content is. So that research phase is really, really important. If it's something I'm doing myself, I try to just dive straight in, because I think for somebody who writes outside of work and in work, it can be quite exhausting. Creativity is it takes a lot. It depletes the batteries.
It does.
So sometimes when it's a piece of content I'm writing for myself, I like to just dive straight in, think of the headline, think of the subheadings I'm going to use, and then kind of structure the content from there.
I love your point about life outside of work also being a creative entity and an enterprise. It can be an incredibly, I find, mentally draining sort of thing, but also you do it because of the love of of the vocation of it all. It's, yeah, you know, you write because you love to. And I
Yeah.
think that's kind of the beauty of it in a lot of ways.
And I think any hobby that you take seriously is exhausting, but as you
Yeah.
say, you get pleasure out of it. So, I play the piano as well, and it's one of those where, as a kid and as a young, as a teenager going into my teen years, I was like, do I really have to practice? Do I really have to practice? And now, when I look back on that, I wish I had practiced a little bit more, because there were certain things that my mum and dad wanted me to do, practice for an hour a night, for example, and I didn't want to as a kid. You just don't want to, because you don't see the benefit of it at that time.
Yeah.
And it's similar for the writing as well. Like, you come home from a hard day at work and you think, can I really be bothered to do this? But then when you get into it, it's just such a lovely thing to do. And it's a talent, and writing is very much a talent, I think. And it's not something that everybody can do. Everybody has talents in different areas, and writing is one of those.
And you have to continuously, talent isn't something that you're just born with. You have to continuously practice it and practice it and practice it to become perfect, if that's even a thing. And what is it? It takes 10,000 hours, 15,000 hours to become an expert in a subject.
I mean, it's a lot. That's a lot of time. It's a lot of hours, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a long, long time to be able to perfect anything. Speaking of something that we spend a long, long time doing, both as fellow movie nerds, I'd love to know, so you've been running Movie Metropolis for over a decade, and I'd love it if you could tell us a little bit about that. So what kind of things inspired you to start it, and how have you managed to keep it going for that long?
Yeah, so it started really as soon as I graduated, to try and keep the writing skills that I'd obviously honed over the course of the previous years in as much of a top condition as possible. Because, as you say, if you don't continue to do something, you kind of lose that. The skill kind of becomes harder to then replicate. So I created the website to do that. And as with anything at that time, I was really naive as to the effort that it would take to keep it up and running. So for the first 4 years or so, I didn't really see any traction with it. And then in 2015, I approached my university, one of my lecturers at university, and I thought, I wished when I was at university that there was a website where I could write and submit pieces of content to, not have to worry about how to then upload them myself and the worry of running a website. So I approached my my lecturer at the university, and I opened the contributor program for the website. And that's where people who are film fans can submit their content. There's no expectation of how many times you have to write, what type of things you have to write. It's just a place where people who love films can share their stories with the world. And we had a massive amount of success with that. And it was actually a couple of years later when I was asked to go back to Lincoln to do a lecture on blogging and writing to a group of first-year students, of journalism first-year students. And from that, we've had maybe 50 or 60 different contributors on the website over the course of the last 15 years. Some from Australia, some from America. We've had a guy from India. And it's just been really nice, because as I've improved in my website running skills, it's obviously seen things like the organic traffic increase, and people are able to have more eyes on their content on the website than ever. I'd like to say it's all down to me, but it isn't. It's down to the team of people who contribute to the website when I'm not able to, when I'm too busy with work, who keep it up and running, and they love doing that. And some of the people that we've had writing for the website have gone on to write articles for Empire magazine and publications like that. So it's been really nice to watch it grow over the last 15 years.
That's really amazing. I really admire just wanting to encourage other writers to be able to go, here's this platform that, you know, we can all share and have it a great place to be able to get our content read. And I think the love of film, I think, has become such an online thing. Yeah. I would say, especially probably in the last 5 years, it's become so en masse, whether it's a platform like Letterboxd, a platform like Movie Metropolis for on X/Twitter. You know, it's everything exists in a vacuum, and I think it's really easy to be able to go, this platform agrees with these sets of views, this platform agrees with these sets of views. And I'm just then wondering, have you got any sort of favorite films that you've reviewed? Have you got any, is there any content that you really love to do on the site, or is there any content that really you found it doesn't really work quite as much?
So my favorite film of all time is Jurassic Park. I have a little bit of an obsession with Jurassic Park, to be honest, much to my partner's dismay, where I collect memorabilia.
Nice.
from the first film and from some of the newer films as well. I'm actually in my autograph phase at the moment where I'm trying to source autographs from stars of the films.
Nice.
I've just got a Laura Dern one actually in the last couple of weeks. Nice one to add to the collection.
Nice.
But yeah, Jurassic Park has kind of been the film that started it all, and that's the film that I owe my love of film to.
Yeah. Because
it's an incredible piece of filmmaking. And in terms of the content that I like to write, I just really enjoy writing film reviews. They are the ones that I feel like I am most natural at. Whereas some of the contributors, for instance, love writing unpopular opinions about films and trying to get a debate going in the comments and things like that. They really love that type of angle.
Yeah.
Whereas I just love going to the cinema, thinking whilst I'm watching the film about, how is this making me feel, or what can I expect from this once it finishes, and then going home and writing a review. So that's kind of where my passion is.
Mm-hmm. I think I really love your statement there of I love going to the cinema and how does it make me feel, because my view of watching films has really evolved in the last few years. So my bit of a tangent. So my undergrad was in film studies, and then my master's degree was in screenwriting. And then in 2021, I was challenged by a friend to watch 100 films in January because we were in lockdown. So I was like, easy, I can do that. That's no problem whatsoever. So cut a long story short, I ended up watching 100 films a month all year. And then, so I ended 2021 having watched 1,234 films because I thought that was a nice round number. Started with Return of the Jedi and I ended with Ratatouille, and it was a challenge. It was great. I was watching about 3 or 4 films a day, for 365 days. It was a lot, but it was great. But my way of watching a film in that year, because I'd kind of fallen out of love with films from having studied it for 4 years.
Yeah.
And I went into that year with this is going to be a fun challenge throughout lockdown. And then I realized, this is why I love this medium so much. This is why I wanted to do a degree in the first place. And this is why I enjoy film as much as I do. Yeah. And I watched Dreamgirls for the millionth time because I love Dreamgirls. And I've always really liked that as it's a good, easy film to watch, but I watched it from a completely different lens. And I think I'd watched a really emotional film beforehand. And then I watched Dreamgirls and I thought, wow, this is the way this film makes me feel is why I love watching films. Yeah. And that to me has then really impacted the way that I would then write about films. It impacted the way that I would do my master's degree, which I would start later on in 2021. And I went through this whole sort of phase of being really into the idea of the good for her ending. It's like Knives Out and like Midsommar, where at the end of it, the woman has come out on top. She might have done some not so good things throughout, but good for her. I'm happy for her. And I ended up writing this really long, I think it was about 5,000 word piece when I was doing my degree. It was all about the idea of female revenge narratives. And it was the exact thing that made me go, yes, this is exactly it. And this is why I love to do what I do. And I think it's that perfect intersection for me of the two things that I love the most, which is writing and films. Yeah. And it's a bit of a tangent, but it's a nice story. And that's, if I can't bring it up any other time than with you now, it's then yeah.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think they are one and the same in the sense that, of course, film has an incredible amount of writing that goes into it to create those pieces of art. And that's how I see writing. I see writing as an art form. And it's always been fascinating to me how you could sit down over the course of a few hours and watch a couple of films, 3 films or so, and each one will make you feel something completely different. So if I watch Jurassic Park, I feel excited because of the action and the incredible cinematography and Spielberg's direction. I could then move on to something like Bridesmaids and absolutely laugh my socks off because it's just that funny. And then I could watch Halloween and be terrified and amazed at Jamie Lee Curtis's performance. To me, there is nothing else like that out there. The visual aspect, of course, is huge, but the way that they're written in such a way to make you feel this, when we know that these things aren't real. I know that the T-Rex on the screen is not real, but it's written and created in such a way that you feel like you are part of that universe. And that's why the best films immerses and the best writing immerses us into that world. I think the big one for me would be Harry Potter, as a massive Harry Potter fan. Like, the films and the way that the scripts are written just makes you feel like you are part of that world. And I feel like that's why, for people of a certain age who grew up with the books and then the movies, that they're one of a kind, I think.
Yeah. I think the Harry Potter films are great examples of perfect adaptations of their books, and there's so much that they miss out on, but they keep the key central things throughout the entire thing. And Steve Kloves, who wrote 7 of the 8 films, he didn't do Order of the Phoenix, and that one has always been my least favorite because it just doesn't feel quite right. But he did the rest of them, and every character is so distinctive, and they're distinctive in the books and they're distinctive in the films. And it's the mark of a great writer, is when everything feels like its own thing and everything feels lived in, and you buy into the relationships and you care about these characters. That to me is what really great writing is.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree.
So I would love to know, with the way that you have intersected film writing and your career, I'd love to know if you feel that film writing has helped shape the way that you will approach brand storytelling. Because to me, I think brand storytelling can be a really interesting way to allow your creative freedom to run wild a little bit. Because when I'm doing like a long piece of work, we'll say, I really like to write in sort of a 3-act sort of structure. If we're talking about screenplays or we're talking about a really long blog article, then I like to write in a 3-act structure, because to me it's always about how do we get from point A to point B to point C in as succinct a way as possible, as in an interesting way as possible, all while entertaining and engaging the reader. So how do you feel about that? How do you manage that?
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I think every written piece of content generally has a middle and then has a conclusion. A lot of people write their conclusions first, or their headlines first, and the middle then comes afterwards. And I think it's the same with any piece of content. Now, as a content marketer, I've had to kind of develop a way of looking away from just the inspirational or the blog content pieces. There's a lot of commercial-led content that I work on for clients, and that's just as important, if not more important, because we're working for clients who are there to make money and to make more money. And how you try to sell something is hugely important, and that's why a really strong tone of voice is super important as well. And that's one thing that we kind of always make sure that we have straight from the very beginning of onboarding a client, is their tone of voice. We kind of live and breathe that tone of voice when we're writing for a client, and I think the structure will follow that tone of voice, and you can kind of adapt that based on the information that you've learned throughout the process. So I think very similar in the way that you can create something super special and immerse yourself in a brand just like you would any other piece of writing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does massively so. I completely agree. I really respect that way of working, because it's making sure that you're able to ensure that the client is happy with the work that they've commissioned from you, and that you're able to make sure that your creative freedom is almost in balance, and you're making sure that you're happy with the work that you're producing. So do you find that there's any kind of struggle there with making sure that your creative freedom is fulfilled, or are you happy to sort of just be as malleable as possible?
I think it's when you're working with large brands, I think you have to kind of remove as much as possible of the personal aspect from the written content that you're producing. When I first started in content marketing at the previous agency, I really struggled with that. And when you receive feedback on something as personal as a piece of written content, it can be quite hard to stomach. And when I was quite naive and had just entered the world of digital marketing, that was something I really did find hard. And then as I've grown and as I've matured and as I've moved away from that agency and moved into Heard, where I am now, and my role at Heard is to run the content marketing proposition and run the content marketing department of the business. To be successful in that area, you have to remove those personal feelings and understand that a brand wants a piece of content written in a certain way. My own personal tone of voice cannot be in that piece of content. So we work with a really large airline, for instance. We're talking billions of pounds worth of of sales a year, that's super important, because if we're writing a commercial page or an informational page for them, it has to reflect their tone of voice. It cannot reflect mine or the team's tone of voice, and that's something we need to make sure that we're really careful with. So I think you need to kind of detach yourself a little bit from the personal aspect of it. It's almost like ghostwriting something. Well, it is ghostwriting something in a lot of cases. So your name is not attached to that once it's live on a website. So something that I did really struggle with at the beginning of my career, but as I've matured, I understand that at the end of the day, a client is paying us to have something written in a certain way, and I need to respect that.
I completely agree. I think when you're working with a high profile client, it can be a real challenge to ensure that you're getting that proper tone, because it has to be so specific and it has to just be almost perfect, especially when it's a company that's got that high of a turnover within that sort of industry. And, we work with clients within the healthcare space. So it's really important for us to make sure that we've got our facts correct, and that we're not trying to, in a lot of ways, it almost feels like, oh my God, I need to make sure that we're not trying to make it seem like this company's selling magic beans. It can be a hard line to toe. And but I like that sort of challenge. I like being able to go, no, go and research this, go make sure you've got all of your facts correct, go and double check it with the client, and then proceed when everybody's happy. And that to me I think that to me makes it feel like my creative freedom is being fulfilled, because I'm a more analytical than creative person. So for me, it's making sure that, I love to research, and it's making sure that all of those things have been fulfilled. And then when I get into the writing side of it, I've got all of the facts, I just need to fill in the blanks. And that is where it sort of lands for me. And that's what I like to do.
Yeah, and I think as well, when I worked at my previous agency, we worked with some healthcare brands as well, particularly in the sexual health space, a few of them. And that was a really interesting one, because we kind of helped them understand that there was a whole audience that they weren't talking to. So they came to us with, their audience that they wanted us to focus on. And I remember speaking to somebody there and saying, there are people out there who are buying your products and you're not talking to them whatsoever. So how about we create a piece of content that is directly aimed at this group of people? And they were really unsure about that. And it took a few rounds of emails to say, let's try it, because we might as well try it.
Yeah.
And I was really proud. I wrote a piece of content, the first ever piece of content on this website aimed at the LGBT community. And it did amazingly well. People felt spoken to in a way that they hadn't been spoken to by this brand before. And that piece of content's still live on the website, albeit with some changes, because we no longer, I'm obviously at a different agency and somebody else will be working on that account. But that was something I was really proud of. So I got to have my way in terms of the creative freedom that it allowed me to create this piece of content, this piece of content that had never been done before. But it still reflected the brand's tone of voice and opened up a new window of opportunity for them to speak to these people that had never been spoken to before.
Yeah, I suppose it's almost breaking new ground, because within the LGBTQ community, there is a lot of, without being too overly graphic here, it's, you don't learn sexual health in school for LGBTQ people, because
exactly.
you're taught the very, when a man and a woman love each other very much, that's sort of along the lines there. Whereas in queer terms, it's all a little bit like, we just had to learn on the job. So it's important, and it must have been really satisfying to sort of break new ground there and go, I will be a man for the people.
Yeah, absolutely. It was one of the proudest moments of that kind of early stage of my career. So something I look back on with very fond memories.
I'd love to move away from the work side of things just a little bit, and I'd love to know, what are your sort of takes on AI tools within writing? And it could be, within your profession, within copywriting, or it could be within the film space. What are your takes?
It's an interesting one, and one that's just constantly evolving. It feels like by the time we'll have finished speaking, something else will have happened and something new will have come in. It concerns me a little bit, to be honest, that people will lose the understanding of the value of content created by human beings. As somebody who works with it quite frequently, I can tell if a piece of content has been written by AI quite easily.
Yeah.
And I think for research purposes, it's very, very good. And it can make writing more efficient in the respect of, say, I'm writing a piece of content on site safety for a construction company. I could then turn around to something like ChatGPT and say, I'm creating a piece of content on this. I need some stats regarding construction fatalities in the UK in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
It can provide those sources for me, link me to those sources so that I can ratify them, and then I can add them into the piece of content rather than having to search on Google for hours on end. So in terms of how it impacts production, the research phase is more efficient. In terms of writing, absolutely not. I don't understand why anyone would want to use what I would call AI written slop, because all it's doing is predicting the next word in the sentence. There is no brain there trying to create something new. And I did speak about this on LinkedIn a few months ago, where I said if that's all that people are doing is creating content through AI software, all it's doing is becoming a race to the bottom, because everything is going to be exactly the same as everything else. And we know that the internet is clogged up with cookie cutter content already. It's only going to get worse if that's what people start to do. So in terms of research, absolutely, I think it's a really valuable tool. In terms of copywriting, absolutely not. One thing it has helped me with is, as a one-man band for the website and for the brand Movie Metropolis, it's helped me with social media a lot more. So I run the Instagram account for Movie Met, and it's been able to help provide me with ideas of content to create myself to put on the Instagram feed. So one thing that I've had a lot of success with over the course of the last couple of months is producing listicles for Instagram. So things like top 10 superhero movies or top 10 worst superhero movies and things like that. But sometimes the fountain of ideas runs dry in your mind. So I will ask it to provide me a list of potentially 20 or 30 topics that I could cover. And then once it's done that, I'll go through and sift through and see which ones I think are good for my audience, and then create the content myself based on what it's supplied me. So I think for people who work on their own, it is an invaluable tool, but just don't use it for any production, basically.
Within this series from freelancers that I've spoken with, everybody's kind of had the same sort of idea, which is, it's great to be able to bounce ideas off of, but absolutely not. These tools don't belong within creative industries, and I completely agree. I completely agree with everything you've said. To me, it's a great tool to be able to research and to be able to streamline that sort of research, because I can spend hours researching. I love that side of what we do. But a lot of the time, I don't want to spend most of my time and eat up into client retainers just researching. I want to be able to make sure that it's done efficiently, and it's really helped me with making sure that I'm along on the right lines, which is great, because I do tend to go off on many a tangent. So it's for me, it's been amazing to be able to help with research and help with some idea generation. But when it comes to actually writing the copy, absolutely not. Stay away.
Yeah, you've touched on a really interesting point, I think, which is the retainer situation for work. A client is obviously paying a fixed fee for a retainer. They have a set number of hours to use each month. And I think for agencies in particular who don't use it for research, those are the agencies that will get left behind, because clients are going to want us as channel specialists to be more efficient with the hours that they're paying for. And when a tool like this exists, naturally it can shave a good couple of hours or so off that research phase. And in the end, you're saving the client time, which means that time that's been saved can be put into another piece of content. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how the industry develops over the course of the next 12 months, well, even 6 months, because it feels like it's changing at such a pace where there is always something new coming out from the AI software and the LLMs. So an interesting one to watch, I think, and one I'm quite excited to see what happens. I think people will start to crave human content again and more, simply because, as I mentioned earlier, there's going to be such a huge bank of something that's saying exactly the same thing as something else. And people will crave that emotional connection again, because when a good writer creates something, it's the same as watching a film. You have that emotional connection with that writer.
It's so important for people to realize that AI doesn't have the same sort of nuance that a human writer is going to have. And I think you're not able to connect to something on an emotional level if there's no reason to connect to it emotionally. And could this be, a bit of a stretched analogy? Possibly, but the original Jurassic Park, you're able to connect emotionally to those characters because we're given a reason to care. Jurassic World Rebirth that came out in the beginning of July 2025, you were not given a reason to care about any of these people. And, there's many reasons as to why that film was, has that sort of problem. One of them being that it was rushed into production so that Universal had something to release in summer of 2025, but that's by the by. You need to make sure that you're giving your audience, your readers, a reason to care. And if you're not doing that, then the audience isn't going to care and they're not going to read it. They're not going to stay. And you want to make sure that they do, so that they keep reading it, and so that click-through rates are high, and so that you're getting a lot of, or whether it is you're looking for leads, whatever it might be, you need to make sure that the audience cares. And there's a certain amount of emotionality that a human writer is able to bring to the table when it comes to writing that AI generational tools will never be able to bring.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree on Jurassic World Rebirth, although I did enjoy it because it's a Jurassic Park film.
Yeah.
But a lot of film scripts have gone a similar way, which I've noticed this year in particular, and perhaps last year, where besides maybe 3 or 4 lines of dialogue, there is no reason for us to understand why these characters are doing the things that they're doing. So I think there was a scene on the boat in Jurassic World Rebirth, for instance, where Scarlett Johansson is talking and saying that she lost one of her friends in one of the mercenary deals that she was doing.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, all right, that's fine, that's quite sad. But then immediately there's a jerk afterwards, and it doesn't let that moment breathe. And I blame Marvel for that, to be honest, because Marvel have always brought the humor, and that's fine, that's what Marvel do. But every other film franchise is now trying to do the same, and for some it just doesn't work. Jurassic Park was a family horror film. That's what Jurassic Park was, sci-fi family horror. We don't need to be laughing and joking. The humor from Jurassic Park came from Jeff Goldblum and his amazing characterization. We don't need to be having silly little moments where you're taking the wind out of what could have been a really emotional moment. But that is the difference between good writing and bad writing.
Yeah, exactly. It's that Marvel dialogue problem where everything's become quippy because Joss Whedon came along and ruined everything. And listen, I love Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I love the Avengers. But come on, I mean, I don't want... It's when everything is quippy and every character has the same sort of sense of humor, it starts to lose any meaning. And then when it funnels down, and in your Star Wars films, you get those horrible scenes like in The Rise of Skywalker where it's, they fly now. It's, worst
Just
nightmare.
don't need it.
I just don't need it. I don't need that in my life. I don't need more Joss Whedon.
No. And the thing is, Joss Whedon is Joss Whedon. So for the films he works on, it's fine, but don't try and make every film a Joss Whedon film, because it just does not work. I was actually having a conversation with somebody the other day about the second Jurassic Park, Lost World, because I feel that's really slept on as a sequel. I think it's very, very underrated. I know Spielberg hated working on it, but it's so much darker than people remember.
Yeah.
Very, very dark film. And I even think Jurassic Park 3 is quite dark. I realise we're talking about Jurassic Park 3 here instead of writing, but it's all related.
It's all relative.
Yeah, absolutely it is. The first 3 Jurassic Park films are quite dark in terms of the way that they're written. And then you move into Jurassic World and Fallen Kingdom and Dominion and Rebirth. I can't believe we've got 7 Jurassic Park films. As much as I love it, I love it.
Yeah.
But 7 Jurassic Park films, it's crazy. They're for a different audience. They made a lot of money, but they are very much lighter in tone. And maybe that's just because I'm getting older and I grew up with the first one, and I want them to continue. I want the series to continue, obviously, as a huge fan. I just want something that can try and recapture that. I don't even know what it is, but that magic that Spielberg brought to the first one.
It's lightning in a bottle. I think the problem with the first Jurassic Park is that there'll never be anything like it again, in the same way there'll never be anything like Jaws again, or there'll never be anything like Raiders of the Lost Ark again, or E.T., or any other Spielberg films from that particular era. It just can't be replicated because he was he was on another plane of existence when he was making those. I mean, what a legendary run.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? And some people in the kind of like Jurassic forums, yes, I am part of Jurassic forums as well. They really want Spielberg back as director. It'll never happen. He's not going to do the 8th Jurassic Park, is he? It's Steven Spielberg. But the 80s and 90s was Spielberg's domain. You know, as you mentioned, the films he created, but also the writers that he brought on board for those films as well. Yeah. The first 2 Jurassic Parks were obviously written by David Coe, who returned for Jurassic World Rebirth, but we don't need to. We can gloss over that, I suppose.
Yeah, he was on a rush timeline, but even
something was happening.
You know, he's done some amazing work. He had a Soderbergh film out earlier this year, Black Bag, which was just fantastic. So, yeah. I mean, we're touching on an important point here. Sometimes a writer just has a bad day at the office, and Rebirth was his bad day at the office.
And as you said, rush production. He didn't get a chance to breathe and create a story that was truly captivating like the first 2 were. But lightning in a bottle is right. It will never be recreated. But we should probably get back to the topic at hand rather than
yeah, I mean, we could sit here and talk films for hours, but I just love to ask you, is there a writer that you particularly admire? And it could be anybody. It could be a copywriter, it could be a novelist, a journalist, a screenwriter, a songwriter, anybody that you admire.
It's probably of no surprise that I'm going to say Michael Crichton, because again, and I apologize because this is going back to Jurassic Park, it's one of the first kind of novels that I read, and I just love the way that it blended that science, because there's so much more science in the novel than there is in the film. And I always say, you know, yes, Jurassic Park is my favorite film. It's one of the greatest films of all time, but the book is something else. And there's such a great blend of science and horror and action in that book that it almost makes me want to have someone to have another stab at the first book, because it's just that good. And naturally, a lot is cut out in the transition to making a motion picture. So I'm going to say Michael Crichton, but I think he was excellent in blending sci-fi, horror, and action together. I think he was one of the all-time greats.
Absolutely. My favorite writers are always people that are able to blend genres, they're able to blend tones, and I've been rereading The Exorcist lately, and I start to read it around every Halloween, as of a couple of years ago. So it's I love the film more than anything, and the book I think is quite possibly the most terrifying thing ever written. William Peter Blatty writing that, he is able to combine these, incredible religious themes with this extreme horror, with this mother and daughter story, along with, this woman who's navigating her own career, meeting, this priest that's really challenging his own faith, and, his relationship with his mother. It's able to juggle so much in such a concise way, because it's not a long book. It's about 300, I think, pages. But it's just incredible. So, Michael Crichton and William Peter Blatty. There we go.
That's it.
Admiration of the week.
Film related again, but there you
go. So I listen to a lot of music while I write. It's always instrumental, or it's film scores. But I'd love to know, is there anything that you like to listen to that you'd recommend? So what should we be listening to?
So and I don't know if this is a popular one or not, but I can't listen to any kind of spoken word whilst I'm writing, as in speech rather than singing. I can listen to singing, but I can't listen to any spoken word. So podcasts are a no for me while I'm writing. So film scores is one of them, as you would probably be not surprised to hear. I also really like just instrumental pieces of popular songs as well. So I have an instrumental playlist on Spotify that I listen to when I'm writing. And generally, I have a favourite singer who is Delta Goodrem, an Australian singer, and I really love listening to her music when I write. I've been a fan of hers since, it's about 20 years, and I just find her music very therapeutic. There's a lot of piano in there, there's a lot of guitar and softer elements to it. So I always make sure I listen to some of her tracks, but generally speaking, it needs to be something a little bit more instrumental. At the moment, I'm really enjoying John Powell's soundtrack for How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah.
I find
great
that
score.
It's just incredible. It's one of the greatest of all time, in my opinion. And I do really enjoy listening to that while I'm writing.
That's a really brilliant score. That's Yeah, just anything John Powell. I think he's really good. I've been listening to as of this week. Because I haven't been doing a lot of copywriting this week. It's just been a lot of social media related things. So I've been listening to re-listening for the third time. Because I like to listen to it towards the end of the year. Barbra Streisand's 48-hour long autobiography.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's just great. I don't know what, like, I'm not even like a particularly big Barbra Streisand fan, but I am, there's just something about it. She's a really great writer. I love the way that she tells her life story. So yeah, anybody out there, go and seek out My Name is Barbara. Adam, this has been really amazing to talk to you about film, about John Powell, about Barbra Streisand. This has been amazing. So I would just love to know, where can people find you? Where can people find Heard? Where can people find Movie Metropolis? Where can people find you online?
Yeah, and yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you very much for having me. I guess in terms of where to find me online, the website is moviemetropolis.net, and we have the Instagram account, which is Movie Metropolis UK as the handle. And then in terms of Heard, we are based in Yorkshire. The website is heard.io. So we're a performance marketing and Shopify Plus development agency, specializing generally in kind of scaling e-commerce brands for marketing. Really great bunch of people. So definitely check out the website, heard.io.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for joining. And thanks everybody for listening. And we will catch you next time.